Hi, I'm really sick, but there's theatre drama, so I've got to cover the theatre drama, so I'm going to battle against my body trying to destroy itself, and give you the rundown on the drama. So, we've seen a trend in the recent months where at several different musicals, behaviour in the audience has been getting frequently and rapidly worse and worse. We've seen situations typically happening at jukebox musicals where audiences are getting overly intoxicated on alcohol or severely entitled and are becoming violent towards other patrons and the front of house members. This is a big fear surrounding a lot of these shows. A lot of artists are worried that they're going to have audiences ruin shows and things are going to have to get cancelled, or we have show stops. And on the other side, front of house members who, let's be perfectly honest, are already vastly underpaid, are going to have to deal with these situations and deal with these customers getting violent. Because of this, and because we've seen this trend building and building, a lot of theatres are putting precautions in place to stop this behaviour, and mainly to protect their front of house staff and to make sure that the shows can run smoothly. A theatre in Manchester decided to ban singing. This is not new. This is not new. It's a typical ask that you're respectful and you don't sing along to shows unless you are invited to. But this theatre has just gone above and beyond to make sure that this message becomes clear with bigger signs on the doors and making sure that front of house members mention it and make sure that people aren't singing along. That's where we come to the comments on the TV show This Morning. So in the UK we have several morning talk shows. One of the most popular ones is This Morning, which has a rotating panel of guests including Philip Schofield, Holly Willoughby, and of course the two hosts that we're about to talk about, Alison Hammond and Dermot. Now, ITV is very strike heavy when it comes to their content, so I can't show you in this video the comments that were said. However, I can read them. So that's what I'm going to do. If you want to see the actual clip, I will leave it in the description down below. However, in this clip, they mention the theatre that has banned singing, and they almost laugh it off. Alison Hammond commented saying that she'd be devastated and she wouldn't even want to go to that production now. And Vanessa Feltz, who was a guest on the show, replied saying, "Isn't that the whole point of going to a musical, that you sing along really loudly while eating an ice cream?" And the entirety of theatre Twitter yelled out, "No! Jesus Christ, that is not what live theatre is about! Have you ever been to a musical?" The almost unanimous opinion of theatre Twitter, which came from fans like me and people who work in the industry, was no. This is really wrong and really irresponsible to laugh at on national TV, especially regarding the situations that we've had in the past. Let's talk briefly about why this has been put into place. There is a difference between tapping your toe along, or enjoying yourself, or maybe even just singing along quietly under your breath. That is okay. The problem is when you start loudly singing, that becomes disrespectful to everyone around you. It's disrespectful to your fellow patrons, because they've also paid for these tickets. They've also come here, but not to enjoy you singing. They've come to enjoy the show. It's disrespectful to the performers. This isn't cinema. They can hear you. If you're singing along loudly, and you're not a professional singer, you're probably going to be off-key. You're probably going to be off-tune. And it's hard enough to hear the music to give one of those great performances. If you can't hear the music and you can't pitch yourself against that, you're going to go off-key. And then that's distracting the performer from giving the performance that the audience has paid for. But the people that are affected most by these situations, in every single respect, is the front of house staff members. They are vastly undertrained to deal with these situations. They shouldn't be having to deal with conflict resolution. That's not part of their job description. And in a lot of these situations, the patrons who are being loud and disrespectful are going to then turn around and be disrespectful to the front of house members who are having to deal with a lot of these situations. We've seen in the past people get violent with front of house, people get abusive with front of house members, and they don't deserve any of that. Jukebox musicals are not an invitation to sing along. Just because you know the song doesn't mean you can sing along. There are many different types of theatre that allow for this. A lot of musicals have been introducing sing-along performances, like Bat Out of Hell did, like Heathers does. These performances are designed for you to sing along, designed for you to have that moment, and they do things with the sound design to make sure that it's not going to be too distracting for the actors on stage, that it's not going to be too distracting for your fellow audiences, because they're all paying to sing along together. When that performance is designed for you to sing along, it's okay. It's okay to sing along at concerts. Concerts have an open invitation to sing along, again because the sound design is done in a way to allow for this. There's also tribute acts. Tribute acts typically, it's not always a given, but will typically allow you to sing along. These are constantly touring at local theatres, and there's no lack of them. But what's more, there's even open invitations to every single performance to join in at the finale. That's the moment after the curtain call where a lot of these musicals will give you the moment to sing along. They're put on the most popular song, they're put on the I Am Telling Yous and Sherry and all of like the really popular ones that you want to sing along to and let you sing along. That's your moment to get up and start dancing, to let go and to sing along and to have that moment of fun all together. But during the actual full performance, when you're trying to get into the story, that's when it's disrespectful to join in to sing along. Especially if they've asked you specifically not to. With all of these situations, there's a time and a place. If you want to sing along, there are performances to do so. There are different things that you can go to. And if you want a show that you can sing along to, something like The Bodyguard or Jersey Boys is not for you. That's why Hammond and Feltz comments are very tone deaf and disrespectful. They completely miss the point of what's going on here. Case in point, what happened the exact same day. We saw these comments and their tone deafness and exactly the kind of behaviour that they were laughing and scoffing off happen the exact same day at the exact same theatre and the exact same show that they were talking about, perfectly displaying every single reason these comments were very, very wrong. So, what exactly happened? Bodyguard musical features the music of Whitney Houston, and towards the end, we get the famous Whitney Houston song, I Will Always Love You. During this moment in the show, several patrons in the upper tier of the theatre in the grand circle started standing up and singing along very loudly, being extremely disrespectful to the other patrons in the theatre. Front of house tried to deal with the situation, they tried to remove her. They cut off Melanie Thornton's mic, but she tried to continue and tried to sing the rest of the song, despite front of house having to issue a show stop to remove this patron from the theatre. This patron proceeded to get extremely abusive and extremely violent. There are several videos floating around where you can see how she tries to hit another person in the audience, and the theatre staff have to literally drag her out of the theatre, kicking and screaming. Police were called to the theatre, and the final 10 minutes of the show had to be cancelled, ruining the final moments of the show for every single person in that audience. This is the situation that we are dealing with now. This is the problem that we're getting into. Because the amount of disrespect that is building up and building up has reached this moment where we're seeing levels of bad behaviour that feel almost unprecedented. There's always been bad audience stories, misbehaviour in audiences, but it feels like we're seeing these become more common and more frequent. So the question becomes, what's the solution? Well, first of all, I think this morning need to apologise. Their comments have not helped this situation at all. Or, if they don't want to apologise, at least bring people onto the show who can give the other opinion. Every single person who was speaking on that show does not come from a theatre background. You have no one there who can relate to these situations with been there in these situations. So at least open up the debate and have some discussion on it where these people who were actually affected by it can open up and talk about what's actually happening. Because to treat this like it's some silly little thing disregards a lot of the violence that is actually being shown in these situations. A lot of people like to point to, well, I've paid for my ticket, so I deserve to sing along if I want to, but so is everyone else in that audience. They've paid their ticket to see this performance and to see the people on stage, not you perform. Paying for a ticket does not allow you to be disrespectful to everyone else in that audience. I think it's also important to mention that there are situations where there are people who can't help but speak in a theatre. People with disabilities, for instance, something like Tourette's, which, you know, you literally cannot help saying things. And I think as a community, we are starting to address that side of this situation. We're starting to open up performances where people can talk, or like Back to the Future did with their relaxed performances. Then again, there's also the other side of the spectrum of disability, where you can't properly focus on things or can't properly engage with a show unless you have that complete quiet. I think having these relaxed performances and also performances where, you know, we're expecting the quiet and the focus is a good way to address this situation and to address, you know, people who struggle to go along with theatre etiquette but want to be respectful but can't because of disabilities. A lot of this situation is coming from people who are just disrespectful. That's our real problem here. But sometimes a lot of this language and a lot of the you can't speak in a theatre or like bashing down on that can sometimes make people with disabilities feel unincluded in theatre, and I wanted to say and mention this and relaxed performances to make sure, you know, this isn't about you. This isn't about people who literally can't help themselves. It's about people who are going to theatres and being disrespectful. So what is causing this? Are audiences unaware of theatre because of the time we spent away from COVID? We see a trend with this. It happens a lot of jukebox musicals. Are jukebox musicals to blame? I don't think it is. I think we see the biggest rise in this behaviour at jukebox musicals because these are the songs that people want to sing along to, that are the songs that people know. But similar situations have happened at other musicals. I think the other thing that we need to mention is alcohol consumption. A lot of people who are being disrespectful or being overly loud are often under the influence of alcohol. Should we ban alcohol in our theatres? You can say that, but what's stopping people bringing in alcohol secretly? What's stopping people from getting really drunk before the show? And then you need to mention the really high revenue stream that theatres get through the selling and the consumption of alcohol in their premises. And then once you've really thought about this, is there really a solution to this? The sad conclusion that I face is, I don't know. I think these theatres are doing everything they can. They're asking politely, they're reminding people, they're putting signs on the doors. How much more can these theatres actually do? And it's such a shame because they have a duty of care to their performers, to their fellow audiences, to the front of house members, to protect them. But it's these very few people. And I think it is important to mention that this is a minority within these spaces. 99.9% of audiences are being respectful, are paying the money and sitting there in silence until the moments where they're being told that they're allowed to sing along. But that's 0.01%. Can ruin the entire thing for everyone. So, what do you think? What do you think about the comments on this morning? Do you know any solutions to this situation? Let me know all of your thoughts on this drama in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me out and it helps out the channel. You can see some of my videos on screen right now, and a link to my Instagram if you want to drop me a follow over there. I share a lot of posts about my recent theatre trips, and honestly, I think my feed looks good. But that's it for me today, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!